You're welcome back. This is a big issue. Just gone by as a discussion on a lot of legalities. So now we're dealing with money. So, I mean, acquitia and contempt and all of that. And now we move to the next segment of the program where we look at what government has been doing on the economic front, raising public sector wages by 10%. Many have said it's been woefully inadequate, but President, who unexpectedly was in the meeting, justified that by saying that the economy was, what he saw was a criminal handling of the economy. Quite some strong words there. He also said that the country, Ghana, was a crime scene. That's strong words. And that the situation was so bad that they could only afford 10% increase. And he promised that should things improve next year, we'll see better. Of course, this was coming at the back of a 25% or so increment the year before. And people were expecting to see a similar quantum, but this time around just 10%. So that's what we have. 23% the year before and then 10% now. Now, let me just provide you some updates. So government has approved a 10% wage hike for public sector workers following successful negotiations with labor unions and the president or the team government. The latest pay rise shows or follows a significant 23% salary adjustment in 2024. The following report has more.
The 10% wage hike marks the second wage adjustment in less than a year. President Mahama personally engaged with union representatives to secure their support for the increase, underscoring the government's commitment to easing financial burdens amid economic challenges. Organized labor had previously called for an increase in the base pay, and according to the Labour Minister, Dr. Rashid Pelpo, the daily minimum wage has now risen to 19 cedis 97 pesos.
An increase in the national daily minimum wage by 10% over the 2024 national daily minimum wage, which translates into a new national daily minimum wage of 19.97 Ghana cedis. The effective date for the implementation of the 2025 minimum wage shall be 1st of March 2025. All establishments, institutions, or organizations whose daily minimum wages are below the new rate should adjust accordingly.
The president assured the public sector workers that they'll receive higher remuneration if the economy recovers next year.
It is said that we create and share. And so let's start cooking the meal now so that we can share when we have created. But right now, the meal is not only insufficient, the cooking pot is even leaking. And so I'll just appeal to you that let's temper our demands for this year. And once we get out of the woods, we've set good targets to bring inflation down so that the cost of everything will come down. We've set targets to grow the economy, to make things better. And when the cake is baked and it's bigger, we'll share bigger. We are proposing an independent emoluments committee that would set the incomes for everybody from the president right down to the ordinary laborer.
President John Mahama, while speaking on the economy, says he has discovered that the economy was criminally handled by the previous NPP administration.
We all knew the economy was in crisis, but some of the things I'm discovering myself, I mean, it's been a criminal handling of our economy. And Ghana is a crime scene, actually. Because how a government can have been so reckless, I cannot understand. But we're faced with a reality, and our options are very few. We can behave like the ostrich and hide our heads in the sand and let the economy crash. But then what effect would it have on Ghanaian households and everybody?
All right, welcome back. This is the big issue. My guest on this segment, Honorable Inusa Fuseni, former MP Tamale Central and Minister for Main Portfolios, the Honorable Fokuo, MP Mansu Kwanta, former MD, the NIB, Professor Godfred Bopping, is an economist, University of Ghana, and we may have Thomas Musa as well, General Secretary of NAT, joining us. We'll look at the public sector wages first. Before, like we heard in our report, it was 23%. I mean, sometime last year.
25 effective. 23 January to June. Then 2% July to December.
Okay, so cumulatively, that was 25%.
Yeah.
Good. But this year, we are just seeing 10%. We don't know what will happen later in the year, but at least for now, we have 10%. Labour initially wanted something in the region of the 20s. I think the government has started with 3 or 5%, and eventually they climbed up to 10%. The president unexpectedly was in that meeting, and many have said that his intervention was key to get Labour to cooperate with the government and all of that. Let me start off with Minister Fuseni. Government is taking power. We were expecting good things, resetting, etc., etc. Inflation is still in the north of 20%, and I mean, we're waiting for the wage announcement. It is just 10%. That is woefully inadequate. When you look at it, that brings it to some 598 Ghana cedis for the month. That obviously cannot do much for people in the lower tier of the economic ladder. Why couldn't we have done better with the hike? 10% so small. Many have said.
Because there's nothing in the pot. We have a leaking pot, not so. So you can only give what you have. But let me backtrack to say that I have followed Labour for quite some time, and I'm happy that Professor Bob K is here and Akufo-Addo, Junibua is here. Fokuo. You know, in 2008, when President Akufo was leaving office, he left the implementation of the single spine to the incoming government. And it was going to be a big chunk of money drawn from the public purse to satisfy and implement the single spine salary structure. Labour was very understanding. Labour advised Professor Mills that if it was going to be difficult to implement the single spine salary immediately upon assuming office, he could defer that. After all, that was not his act. Labour did that. So, what Labour has done is not new. They have
been consistent.
They have been consistent. They're reasonable people. They understand the situation of the country, and so they are prepared. And like the one American president said, they are prepared to give back to the country and not ask what the country can do for them. So I commend them highly for what they have done. The truth of the matter is that, and again, Prof is here. I mean, economists will say that if you want to keep the purchasing price parity, you want to keep the equilibrium of the PPP, purchase price parity, you have to match salary increases with the rate of inflation. But that has got also an adverse effect. Immediately you match it, you drive inflationary trends again. Because when you drive it and it is equal to production, probably you are able to save the country or the workers from the inflationary trends that an increase in salary will bring. But you're talking about the public sector. The economists have been at pains to try to quantify what productivity means in the public sector. So you're going to face inflationary trends, whatever, even if it were 3%, you're going to face inflationary trends. But suffice it to say that since we have not been able to match the salary increase with the level of inflation, they are going to be worse off, a little worse off, because their purchase price parity will definitely reduce. But that is the sacrifice. That's the sacrifice they have been able to give. Now, why have they been able to do that? One, goodwill. Goodwill to the president. You see, they are Ghanaians, we're all Ghanaians. And so, if the country is prosperous, if we're able to meet the promise given to the people of this country by the Constitution, creating equality of opportunities and prosperity, we, the people of Ghana, become the beneficiaries. And so, if there's a new government, you want to give the new government the benefit of the doubt, to see whether the new government can engineer policies that could bring about the equality of opportunity and prosperity promised by the Constitution. So you look at it on the goodwill basis, they've done exceedingly well. When we were campaigning, we said we wanted a president we could trust. We wanted honesty. We wanted leadership. And so when John Dramani Mahama, the president of the Republic of Ghana, sat in the meeting, he connected with them emotionally. And then spoke to them in ways that they were prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt. And in Legon, the Legon Hall motto is that to whom much is given, much is expected. Now Labour has given the government the benefit of the doubt.
So government must not deliver.
Government must now deliver.
Labour will not take excuses the next time.
Government must deliver. Government must deliver because they've given us the benefit of the doubt. They said, look, we know that inflation is eating away our monies. We know that we can't make ends meet, but we are quite understanding of the situation in which the country is. That we are also citizens of this country. That you have come with policies. We want to give you the benefit of the doubt to implement those policies and see that how that policies or those policies can translate into prosperity for the country Ghana. Because if we are prosperous, we all benefit.
How crucial was the president's personal attendance?
That shows leadership. That shows concern.
But that also shows that I have people to do the job, but I didn't think they could do it, so I have to be there myself.
That shows that he's added them with his people. Because if you read Article 58, you will be left in no doubt that the executive power, the power to increase the wages
resides in him.
It resides in him. You see, he only delegates those powers to his Minister of Labor, his Minister of Finance and whatnot. But he is the power.
So how consistent is he going to be with that? Is it a case anytime there's difficulty in arriving at a consensus, then he has to make an appearance?
Oh, but that's not the first time he's
now here it happened in 2013.
In who?
Yes. But now it's the same person again.
Yes.
2013 and 2025, we've seen him again.
Yes.
So tomorrow, if there is a difficulty, there's a deadlock, Labour, instead of listening to the minister, will want to see the president himself. Doesn't that reduce his weight or power?
You know what?
In the eyes of the people, they want to see him.
I know, and I've been shown documents. I've been shown things that clearly, probably, the leadership of Labour were probably shown those things, and that pushed them to understand the precarious situation in which the country is, and you simply cannot give what you don't have, and so, having said that, I just pray to God that our appointees at all levels of the system understand the situation in which we are and work their backs to reset this country. Because if Labour sees any sign of recklessness on the part of this government, or of wastefulness on the part of this government, of corruption on the part of this government, they might not be willing to give us another chance, and they will take their pound of flesh.
I see.
So I just hope that we will reset, we will put things in order in such a way that we can continue to inspire that level of confidence that many more, apart from organized labor, many more Ghanaians in all fields of life will make that sacrifice that Finland made after their war with Russia to rebuild their country, where women had to bring out their gold trunklets and gold chains to sell, to give to the country, to rebuild that country. That when we have genuine leadership, a leadership that cares for the people, we will get there.
I see. Prof, 10% in the face of rising, I mean, with inflation is not particularly towards a certain trajectory. It's been undulating back and forth, but it's still above 20%. Just 10% is insignificant, really, because inflation will eat out a chunk of that, or eat that out completely. is the Ghanaian worker not left more impoverished, even in the face of this hike in minimum wage?
Well, certainly, yeah, that is where we are. I'm not too sure. Labour went into this negotiation with the aim of breaking even. I'm not too sure that was the goal. And I want to believe that in this particular instance, government had a stronger bargaining power because government had preempted, some way, somehow, was at the head of the curve in terms of showing leadership. And if you look at the communication of the president and government, cost-cutting measures, lean government, they've reduced the number of ministers to 60.
Currently, we have 42.
Yeah, but we are planning with 60 because he had indicated that we have 4 more deputies that will come. So that is how we are looking at it. Beyond that, there have been other cost rationalization measures. And every statement of the president reinforces that kind of efficiency, lean government, modesty, and all of that. Now, if you back this up with a goodwill, I will call that one the honeymoon effect of a change in government and all of that, then you realize that at the negotiation table, it's going to be difficult for organized labor to hold out for more and all of that. And I want to believe that it was clear to all parties that this year is more or less like, this is our honeymoon presentation to you, and we are going to monitor development. And the president himself indicated that in good times, we'll remember you, and all of that. So looking at it, of course, if you look at it over a period of time, real wage typically has been negative, right? We haven't had a time where we see that consistently real wage, nominal wage can go up, but if you look at rise in prices and all of that, really, real wage has been negative. And that is why, particularly the crisis we saw towards from the third quarter of 2021, it was actually a crisis of the middle class, right? And it was a leveling up crisis. So if you look at the data, you see lower middle income poverty rising sharply, upper middle income poverty rising sharply, because you see that inflation jumped and wage couldn't match up with that. And when you see the gap, I mean, 2021, 2022, and the rest of, particularly food inflation, that takes almost between 42 and 44% of our disposable income, then you realize that really organized or labor, the worker really has suffered enough. I hope that with this new regime, there will be consistency. We've seen that before. Anytime there's a regime change, you see that on the back of that goodwill, we tend to be more transparent in terms of whatever that has happened and try to let the people know what the real situation is. Sometimes the goal is not because we as leadership want to learn from this, that we will not repeat this. The goal is more either to make the other party look so bad as they exit, and to also create room for us to be able to moderate things. That's what we've done to ourselves. You can see that in 2001, when there was a change in government. On the back of that goodwill, in fact, utility prices went up by more than 60%. I mean, things were so drastic. Not like, everything was like, look, if you don't act, Ghana won't be there the following week. Fast forward, 2028, 2029 with a change.
2008, 2009.
Yeah, 2009. Fast forward, after a regime change, we saw that. On the back of that, quickly we went to IMF in July 2009. So between July 2009, July 2012, we were under the IMF. Then fast forward, 2017, there was a regime change. Look, you go and look at the 2017 budget and the State of the Nation address, the first one the president gave, the kind of country that was painted to us, of course, ostensibly to make the previous government look some way, right? And then also interestingly, if you look at the manifestos of the two main parties, the 2024 manifesto, the preamble, how the NDC described the economy, the state of the economy, in the run-up to the My big bosses.
You need to read that part.
Yeah, you need to, and then so that you understand that all of this, there's also a game, right? And all of this will play out in the negotiation. So if you look at the state of the economy the NDC described, it looks as though we had not even left Egypt, let alone to get closer to the promised land. Then, just a couple of flips. Look at the NPP's manifesto 2024 and look at the state of the economy they describe. It looks as though we're just about entering the promised land. Okay, so all this, of course.
Shouldn't we, so what's the reality? The reality should be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, yes.
And who tells us the reality?
Of course, we have independent data. We are also monitoring and all of that. I think if you look at where we are, we can say that, of course, if we use 2022 as a benchmark, that was a worst case scenario for us. Inflation 54.1% and all. We can say that we've gone past that worst case scenario. But again, it doesn't look like we are out of the woods. We still have a lot that we have to do. If you look at the IMF report, December 2024, the situation is still is quite fragile. And here, let's just look at things. Look, 2022, we're comparing Ghana to Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Ghana to Zambia. These were our friends at the time. But if you look at inflation in Zambia today, inflation in Zambia a year ago, and you see the progress they've made. Wow. Inflation in Sri Lanka, I think in 2022 was more than 57%. Inflation in Sri Lanka today is less than 3%. In fact, food inflation is less than 3%. So these countries had similar crises. But if you look at the progress that they've made, particularly in bringing down food inflation, because the reality is that once you see spike in your food inflation, it affects. There are so many things you can plan around, right? I mean, you can disengage after engagement. You can postpone childbirth through family planning and all of that, but you can't postpone hunger. So every country takes certain things very seriously. Okay, and that is why advanced countries, they will not talk about food security. They will be more particular about food sovereignty. We should have total control as to what our people will eat, that it should be available. And look, December 2024, Ghana ended up with food inflation of 27.8%. So come to think about it, that over a 12-month period, right, food inflation on the average have gone up by 27.8%. Okay, when we are saying that effectively wage increment was, let's say, 25%, that doesn't leave the worker in any better situation. But of course, again, also, if you are looking at it futuristically, if everything should go according to plan, then we are saying that probably we should be returning to single-digit inflation in 2025. Okay.
2025.
Yeah. Per the IMF supported program, by the end of 2025, inflation should decelerate to 8% with a symmetrical rate of 2%. In other words, 8% plus or minus 2, meaning that we are looking at inflation band of 6 to 10%. Right. So if we are able to achieve that, then probably on the back of that next year, we'll begin to also look at things progressively. But let me say this. Government may have gotten away with this increment, but I think people are watching. As you rightly said, and it's not just the president alone, across the entire government machinery, right? So we should take Ghanaians seriously. Government should take Ghanaians seriously. If you look at it, right, in the last couple of years, some of the things that find their way into the wage negotiation, they are not really technical considerations. Some of them have to be just the lifestyle of government. People are watching. Okay, so, and the public sentiment, all of that feed into the wage demands, for which reason organized labor will hold out for more. Because you can't tell us that we should fasten our belt when you didn't even have a belt on in the first place. Okay, and all of that. So I want to believe that it's small, 10% is very small, but I think we have accepted that. Let's go back to work. There's a part that we also have to do in increasing productivity. There's a part that we also have to do in terms of holding government accountable. There's a part that government also has to do in all of that. But I want to believe that, of course, as the data, the more you have access to the data, the more you see that things are not that good. There's a lot of work that we have to do going forward.
I'm interested in what accounted for the progress in the Sri Lanka situation and the Zambia situation and what has been derailing ours, but I'll come to you later on that. Honorable Fokuo, so your side has said that you left, like you just said, 25% increment the previous year. This is 10%. This is less than half of what you did the previous time, and you were expecting that things would be better. But the president has laid the blame squarely at your door that the economy was not handled properly. Even he called it a criminal mishandling of the economy and declared Ghana as a criminal or a crime scene. These are strong words coming from the president. I mean, he said they anticipated that things were bad, but the discoveries they are making, make him feel like Ghana is a crime scene. These are damning. This is a damning verdict on your record as a government.
Yeah. Thank you, Salam. Thank you very much for having me. So firstly, on the 10% that has been agreed. I mean, I take it that yes, leaders of the various organized groups, they've gone through negotiations and they've signed to this 10%. So that one is signed to already. But firstly, I'll take this opportunity to commend the ex-president, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, for showing love to the public workers of Ghana, giving them 30% increase in 2023, giving them effective 25% in 2024, based on the strong economy that was eventually handed over. And I believe the people of Ghana, the public sector workers really appreciate the love that the ex-president showed them. On the issue of, the economy having been mismanaged and all the words that are being used to describe it, I mean, I get really surprised. I get really surprised because the figures are there. These are not things that you can hide. The figures are there. The economy that was handed over to the current government. I mean, you have an economy that suffered significantly during the COVID, rebounded, and still managed to hand over real GDP growth of some 4%, which is really decent for handing over real GDP growth of 4%, handing over balance of payment, very strong, balance of payment of $3.1 billion US, very strong, end of the year. An economy, if you want to test it again, one of the litmus tests to show whether an economy is strong is stock exchange, because companies are listed there. Strong companies are listed there. The composite index there, year on year, grew by 56.2%. This is a fact. The market capitalization significantly improved. Okay, so with all these, would you describe this economy that has been able to increase public sector wages by 30% 2023, 25% 2024, stock exchange composite index increasing year on year by 56.2%, with balance of payment positive, that is surplus of $3.1 billion. All these, you call this economy as having been mismanaged, then, I mean, what figures are we working on? Real GDP growth under these circumstances, 4%. What figures are we working on? So I will commend once again the ex-president for showing the love and demonstrating it through the payments that he made to the public sector workers, 30%, 25%, showing the love, and the fact that he handed over an economy that was really strong, an economy that had rebounded from the COVID era all this way to the figures that are demonstrated. So for me, I'm just landing. Okay. For me, the 10% should not be linked to the fact that an economy was mismanaged and whatever and was handed over in tatters or whatever, I've given the figures, and the figures are there for everyone to check. The economy that was handed over. So if, the 10% was agreed through negotiations with the leaders and all that, whatever, that is fine. That was their agreement. It's their prerogative. This is fine. But the economy that was handed over was not in tatters, and the figures are there.
So you mentioned some indicators as well. So
yeah.
Inflation is a major one. We say inflation is a tax on the poor. Yeah. Major one. That has not been accounted for really. We have rate of borrowing, interest rate, very, very high. One of the highest we've had over the period currently. So we have other factors that affect the ordinary person. Fuel prices, exchange rate, all of that. Those things affect the ordinary person more than maybe the rate of growth. Those things are important. But in translating to the ordinary man, inflation, exchange rate, and all of that affect the people more. But those ones have not done well. So if the conversation is that you left the economy in tatters, it could be referenced to these indicators I've mentioned: inflation, exchange rate, interest rate. What do you say?
Yeah, thank you. So the figures I gave out are strong indicators that also show itself in the areas of inflation, in the areas of exchange rate, and all that.
Like stock exchange. Very high level will play.
They work in tandem. Okay. So inflation, yes, but we've seen inflation go down. There's been a bit of an uptick, but always it is good to go down to understand why inflation at a point in time is up or down. Inflation now have seen a bit of an uptick because of the food basket. And the food basket, you ask yourself, what has caused that? And if you go down, you understand it's more of the weather, the delay in the rains, and all that. It is not because our farmers are not doing what they have been doing. It's not because the government support through the brilliant program of
Planting for Food and Jobs.
Planting for Food and Jobs has been, was not managed well. We know the support that has been given to farmers and the country as a whole through the second phase of the program and all that. So all those have worked, but we've had poor weather, we've had delays in the rains and all that. If you read the Statistical Service report, you understand the basis for the inflation that has had an uptick. The exchange rate, I did mention the balance of payment figure that we left end of the year, $3.2 billion in surplus. And if you're talking about exchange rate, the key indicator or the key determinant of the exchange rate is balance of payment. And that is how come around, the first 3 quarters of last year were not all that good. But as you got to the fourth quarter, you saw the improvement. And we left a balance of payment surplus of $3.1 billion US. So you saw the improvement. So all these indicators, if you take them one after the other, you will see the work that the NPP government did to make them better. So inflation, I've given you the indications that if you go deeper into it, you understand it better. The exchange rate, where it started from, and the improvements as we got to the last quarter, and if you see a balance of payment of $3.1 billion, it should be something that we should all pat ourselves, in the back.
I don't know what your reference point is, but the Mahama people or the government side, their reference point sometimes in 2016. So when they talk about exchange rate, it went up, it's come down and all of that. What's the reference point? In the middle of your own administration when you had total control, when you talk about inflation, they left around 15 or 16, 15.4. You took it to 54.1 and we are now around 23. So what's the reference point? Is the reference point when it was highest under your watch or when you took it at the lowest, when at a relatively lower point when you took it over from them? So what was the reference? So when they are comparing, they will not compare your regime to your own regime. They will compare your regime to their regime, what they left behind. Interest rate was lower, exchange rate 4% or 4 cedis or 5 cedis to $1, you know, and all of that. So
was 8.1%.
So when they put all of that, like unemployment now about 14% before you left, when you put all of that together and they say the economy is in tatters, these are the references I think they are making, and not using when things were very bad in the middle of your tenure, the 54.1% and all of that, the height of COVID. That's not what they are looking at. They're looking at what they left behind.
Let me add to what you have said, that Ghana does not exist in isolation. So if you look at Ghana relative to other countries, even our regional peers that were equally impacted by this crisis, you see the rate of recovery. If you look at Cote d'Ivoire, look at Rwanda, Kenya, okay, their economic progress after COVID.
They have recovered better.
Much better.
So hang on, I'll ask you to deal with that. Together with Sri Lanka, why have they recovered better? Why are we not doing good? So will you want to address that?
So all that I was trying to address is the issue of complaints about what was handed over to them. And I was giving a reference as to at the time that we handed this economy to them, where we were. And it wasn't as bad as being painted. If you've gone into negotiation and handed over 10%, just few months after your previous, the previous government was able to do 25%, and if you have gone in and given 10%, then you are comparing the two. What really changed? And they are saying we handed over an economy that was so bad. And that is why I'm giving the indicators as of the time
if the economy was so bad, you couldn't have given 25%.
We couldn't have given 25%. So that quick, I'm coming. That quick change, really what has happened? They claiming they've seen something that is so bad, which we don't know yet. What is it? But I'm telling you, at the time that we were handing over, these were the indicators, and we were able to do 25%. For 2024, 25%. The prior year to 2024, we did 30% with the same economy, and payments were made. And I've given the GDP real growth rate that we also handed over end of the year. I've given the balance of payment that we handed over at the time that the change was made. So I understand the fact that we can compare years back and all, but sometimes when you do those comparisons, they don't align well. And I believe we know. If I pick prior to 2020, I pick 2012, and I say 2012 exchange rate was X amount, and 2024 it is this. There are a lot of changes that would have happened in the economy.
But you politicians have made us do that.
No, I understand.
Because it favors you at some point.
I understand. But at this point in time, what the other side is saying is what was handed over. And I want to disprove that. That
if it was as bad as they claim, it wouldn't have been 25 before and now it's 10. So what has changed in between?
And 30, the 2 years before. And the other parameters that I've given, that if you want to really do a litmus test, look at the stock exchange. It's independent. Different companies, irrespective of whatever, they have no political coloration or whatever. Different entities put in a basket. What is the performance? We have seen the composite index, and I indicated, grown by 56.2% year on year. Do you need anything else to convince yourself that the economy had rebounded and was doing well before it was handed over? So what was handed over, to me, if you look at these indicators, was not as bad as being painted. But if you have decided to give the public, sector workers 10%, and the union leaders have accepted this, like I said, that is their prerogative. We know where inflation is currently. So if you look at, in reality, in real terms, if you net off inflation of the 10%, in real terms, they are in the negatives. But I'm not going to say it's A or B or it's blue or whatever. I say they went into negotiations. They've been able to come out with 10%, but I commended Nana Akufo-Addo for doing 25% and 30% and handing over an economy that was strong. And I've given the indicators at the time when it was handed over.
Very well. So a very bad economy, you want us to believe, was able to manage 25%. And a few months down the line, we don't know what has drastically gone bad. We're just giving 10% with the excuse that the economy was mishandled in a criminal fashion. You know, what has changed?
So first of all, you need to understand, and we are happy that I'm not an economist, I'm a lawyer. And I'm happy that Professor is here. I don't know why you are celebrating 30%. I don't simply understand why you are celebrating 30%. When you increase the salary of somebody by 30%, you are compensating for a loss. A loss in real income. So probably you worked in Europe. Have you seen any European country increase salaries by 30%?
I'm not
No, please. I mean, you can note it down.
Let him learn.
You are compensating for a loss. It means that the institution is so bad that to compensate for the loss, you have to raise the salary. And it's a spiral effect. That when you raise that salary that high, you compound the problem. And you cannot see, we can all see why it happened. Where do you think they got the 30% to increase salaries by? Printing of monies from the Bank of Ghana. Printing of monies. Not that they worked for it. When they printed the monies and gave to government to increase salaries by 30%, we threw more than 1 million people into poverty. You don't see the nexus, you don't see the connection. You don't see it. The 1 million people had to struggle to come out again. When you say foreign reserve, within the period that you declare DDEP, what foreign loans were you servicing? What foreign loans were you servicing? So you think that if you were servicing those loans, you leave a reserve of 3.1 billion? You think that you leave it? No, you see, this is the impunity that made the people of Ghana vote so massively against the MPP. Because they think they were fools. My brother, in 2016, if you had 4,000 Ghana cedis or 4,200 Ghana cedis, you were holding $1,000. You were holding $1,000. In 2024, you were holding 4.2 million Ghana cedis. How much were you holding? How much were you holding? Less than $500 dollars. Less than even $200. And the economy had improved. This is why Prof is telling you that the middle income people and salary workers were those who suffered the most because their salaries were stagnant. They were benchmarked to the what? To the city. And the city was falling like dry leaves in the Hamatan. That is the problem. So I'm not saying that 10% more than compensates for the loss that labor is. I've not said that. We're not even going anywhere yet. Look, the TDF. People who save their entire lives, DDEP, their entire lives, with the hope that when they go on retirement, that money will carry them until their death and leave what they can leave for their surviving children. Had to lose. Do you know what that did to Ghana? And the economy was strong then? Now, if the economy was strong, we won't go to IMF and say that, well, probably give us 3 billion support. Give us 3 billion support. If the economy were that strong. So no, I'm talking about salary. Why Labour has done what they have done. They have been very magnanimous. I know. I'm a farmer. In 2017, I knew how much I bought 1 liter of diesel for. I was already into the farming business. And I knew by 2024 how much I bought a liter of diesel. So it was not about rains. I knew how much I bought a 50 kilo of fertilizer, MPK4, in 2016, 2017. and I know how much I bought it in 2024. It's not rains. The chemicals that I use on the farm, it's not rains. It's because life became very, very difficult. Do you know the number of businesses that folded up in this country between that period and the reference? So yes, we are saying that it's difficult. It has been a difficult situation. We need to rebuild this country. And we're not going to rebuild this country by praising people who have led us to where we are today. Anytime I hear comparisons we have done well, I say, what is the basis? What is the litmus test? I mean, repeating mistakes has never been considered as experience, has it? So in 2016, MPP said NDC had committed errors, gigantic errors. And if we wanted to know how not to manage a country, it was to look at the performance of the NDC. Then the debate was the statistics, the stats. Then the Ghanaians were convinced. I mean, were even convinced to the point that they had told us that they were going to move the country from taxation to production. And I agree with them, because taxing makes people poorer. I said, oh, if you are going to do that, then many people agreed. I didn't vote for them though, but many people believed that they were going to do a wonderful thing, because productivity is our problem. So if you are not going to be taxing the people, even taxing the poor,
if you are going to
produce,
then that's a good one.
So you are going to make room. We are going to make for the shortfall in deficit by production and not by taxation. Wonderful. Then they gave them the power.
But they did.
They didn't improve. Let me conclude. They didn't. For the 8 years MPP stayed in power, they didn't improve one single stat that NDC left in 2016. Tell me which one they improved. Not one.
No, the growth rate.
What growth rate?
NDC left 3.6, but in fact, we're just hearing, or we know that they left almost 4.0.
You know the conditions that left.
And then even before
the conditions
that came, we're top of 6.
You know the conditions that
6.9.
Averagely 6.9.
We're averaging 6.9.
Yes. So that was an improvement.
At the exit point. NDC, when they were in power, we
but at the exit 11,
point, 11.
No, that was oil.
Please.
That was oil.
Please.
The same oil played a role in 2017 and 20.
I
see. There were 2 more wells. There were 2 more wells in 2017.
Yes.
Okay.
But 2015, you can trace it to 2015, 2016 interventions in the oil that gave birth.
There was a sacrifice that was attended.
Professor, this we have gone through. We have gone through all this debate, and we can debate it. If we take oil out of the growth that they are now talking about, you get nothing. So we know what we're talking about. We're saying that let's put the past behind us and work together to rebuild this country.
Now, putting the past behind us also means that not referencing at every least opportunity.
Referencing the past becomes a guide. I'm talking about wastage. We all saw it. And Prof has told us that one thing that the Labour will be looking out for is to see whether we will repeat the mistakes of the past. So Labour has what it considers as mistakes of the past. So that past, when we refer to it, we are referring to it as a guide. We must not, you see, I've said it somewhere, and I'll say it on this platform. NDC as a government cannot afford to fall up to the level that MPP fell, or even lower. Lower is an annihilation.
Lower will not be good for the country.
It will not be good for the country.
It will not be good for our democracy.
It will not be good for our democracy. So we are acutely aware that there is a heavier responsibility. Look, have you looked at the democracy index? People are losing
faith or confidence
in democracy.
From CDDR full barometer.
The barometer report. It should be because why are they losing? If we are doing so well. Because if we are doing so well, then we are saying that the dividends of democracy are good. So please, once again, I'm standing here on behalf of the NDC to salute Labour. I know we could have done more, but Labour also understands. I think 2 years ago I was reading UK, where Labour was asking for an improvement, an increase in salary, during the COVID. And the argument was how that will drive inflation.
Because the pass-through is very strong.
Strong.
U.S. advanced countries,
Yes.
they are very mindful of wage-led inflation.
And how that will drive inflation. So to say that you increase wage by 30%, and what was the real increase? What's the real increase?
So that's a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk to us about how other countries were able to improve quite drastically.
Before we go, Dr.
And
Kapsi,
we-
you look at Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, yes. Sri Lanka was
You know,
bad.
it
And
was
even
so bad
in
that-
2022, we were all scared of getting to the Sri Lanka level. but-
Yes, it was bad that the government collapsed.
Yes,
Yeah.
the top. I don't know why they went to the government house.
Yeah.
People were swimming in the president's pool and all of that. You know? those were interesting times.
Ghana was...
What should we do? What did they do to recover so quickly, and why are we not recovering?
Of course,
as fast?
they also went to IMF,
yes.
and all of that, got that support, monetary tightening, but also more importantly, the fiscal side, fiscal probity is very important. Okay, you see, the point is that, look, and if you look at Ghana, if you look at the injection of excess liquidity into the economy, the money printing, at some point the central bank even denied it. But in 2022, if you look at the domestic debt exchange, we were talking about 77.6 billion cedis by way of overdraft lending to Ghana government. 77.6 billion cedis injected into the economy. What do you expect? We say inflation. How does it come about? When aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply. And what is the source of that excess aggregate demand? It's coming from the excess printing and injection, to the extent that they didn't go to the productive sectors of the economy. It is not unexpected to see inflation go up the way it is. And then since then, all that we have been doing through monetary tightening, tiered reserve requirement and all of that is just to mop up excess liquidity. And the more you are mopping up excess liquidity, remember, it's going to have implication in terms of access to credit by the private sector. So the economy's productive capacity has not been enhanced in the last couple of years. And once it happens that way, you're going to struggle. Even if you talk about the food inflation, as he mentioned about, you look at post-harvest losses. Our farmers have been very hardworking.
There was an intervention by Dr. Akufo-Addo, the former Greek minister, of bringing in the food from the hinterlands and all
We
of
should
that.
go to the ministry and go and buy plantain.
That
was really helpful.
was just one.
We could have expanded that.
No, but he didn't expand it.
Cities.
Yes.
No, it takes time to do that.
No, but he abandoned it. It didn't happen again. It didn't continue.
He didn't abandon it.
If you go and carry plantain and then bring it to the ministry
to sell.
No,
we are...
that was just the start.
That was a manifestation of a failure.
That was just the start.
The
failure.
The plan was
planning for food and jobs.
across the other bigger.
But why didn't it
planting
happen?
for food and dog.
Sorry?
Why didn't it
Where are
happen?
the dogs?
No, it was a process.
But he started it.
Yeah,
He was the
you
one,
started.
championing
You've
it.
been there for a very
But
long time.
it didn't go anywhere.
You don't start these things and go boom. You start a pilot. Sometimes you pull back to look at how it went, whether, you had to pull this here and there to perfect it, and so on and so forth.
Very
So it was started. It was a piloting. And I believe there was a
But
bigger
a lot of
plan.
people think the program was not popular. So if you are defending it, then it was not popular to a lot of people.
I think you need a lot of time to defend
A lot of
that.
people actually disparaged it. A lot of people actually disparaged it and called it all sorts of names. But let him land substantively so that I come back to it.
So there are structural issues that we have to face here. Even if you look at the food price build-up, transportation costs, we've been talking about constructing roads, rural access and all of that. Where are those roads? So, and linking farmland to market centers and all of that, very weak. Look, sometimes, of course, I came from a typical village. If you look at what our farmers go through during harvest season, sometimes when it coincides with the rainy season, post-harvest losses. Come on, this is a country that has abandoned farmers. There's no linkages and all of that. Farm input doesn't get to the farmers on time. The diversion and all of that. Look, We say some of these things in private, like Ghana is a crime scene and all of that. If you look at some of the things that we do to ourselves, we will be unique to expect a different outcome. If you look at Sri Lanka, the fiscal discipline, the people were so angry that those who took over, they were scared to even abuse the dollar. But we've gone through this worst crisis, but leadership didn't show in Ghana that there was really anything happening. Look, we are talking about food inflation. Look at what illegal mining, irresponsible mining has done to our farmlands. We are talking about cocoa. Ghana is not known for cocoa. What have we done with the cocoa sector?
Look at Ghana is known for cocoa.
Where is the cocoa?
Okay, Ghana is not known for cocoa today. But we are the number two. We are number 2 in the world.
Yeah, you are number 1.
Yeah.
You are not celebrated number 2.
But many years ago.
But you are not celebrated.
So it's just because so many countries are not into the. But look at what is happening in South America, okay, and the other places. But look at your cocoa outputs. And when I say we should not be known for cocoa now, other critical aspects of the economy are actually bringing much more effects
than cocoa.
Even apparel. The apparel is bringing more than cocoa is bringing now. What is it? Since cocoa, we have not been able to sustain it.
I think we will do less than 500.
Yes, we have not been able to sustain it. Our farmers are trading off their cocoa farmland for illegal mining, for other cash crops and all of that. Look, we don't have a clear national policy to preserve farmlands in Ghana here. Look, in the 70s, we had Operation Feed Yourself and Operation Feed Industries. That policy probably worked in the short term. But today, that policy won't work. Do you have a backyard? The threat of urbanization, real estate, and all of that is pushing farmlands further away. With bad road network, even if you wanted to do farming, it's quite going to be very difficult in the urban areas. But when you go to London and the rest of that, you see farmlands in the heart of the city. You see it. We have destroyed all of that through real estate, urbanization, and all of that. We are not preserving farmlands. We are not linking the farmlands to market centers and all of that. Then suddenly you expect that the numbers will show up good. Largely because the supply chain was intact. We're getting food complement from Burkina Faso, Niger, and the rest of them. And therefore we celebrated low inflation and all of that. Then COVID came and we became exposed. In fact, COVID was the real test of our performance. We should celebrate it because it actually revealed...
You should celebrate COVID. Something that destroyed us.
No, look, because it actually revealed the propaganda economy from the real economy. And you will see countries that went into COVID with better economic fundamentals. So if your economy was resilient, inclusive, the COVID, they were able to respond relatively better compared to other countries and all of that. Then again, you want to look at the inflows. But you see, in 2017, we had a similar discussion when there was a change in government. The base pay increase was at, I think, 12.5% or so. And all of that. If you look at the discussions that went into that also, you will see the goodwill of the government.
12.5.
Yeah, and how organized labor was very accommodative and all of that. But let's not take that for granted. As I indicated, this is the honeymoon, and the NDC is enjoying that honeymoon effect and all of that. I'm just hoping that they will take practical steps. Their first major budget, we are told, will be presented on March 11th and all of that. I think that is very important. We need to rally Ghanaians behind. We need to increase productivity. We need to also improve spending efficiency. There was something the president spoke about. I think the Minister of Finance during the vetting also mentioned that they will have a committee that will look at value for money in terms of big ticket procurement, so that we don't spend so much to get so little and all of that. I think if we could look at that progressively, Ghana will be making progress. I think those are the things that
I see.
We should
so, what should we be doing? I mean, looking forward. I mean, the 10% is not good enough. They say it's the economy and all of that. What should we be doing to improve the economy? You talk about food inflation, to bring that down, to ensure that inflation itself comes down, and that ultimately will affect growth, and that may even help the exchange rate, interest rates may come down. What should we be doing?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if you look at the space that we have, now we have the medium-term growth strategy, which has put together what the country could do to improve its revenue, as we have it now, from 13.6% of GDP to the 18 to 20%, what we should do. So if I look at that document, I feel now what is scaring at the face of the NDC is the fact that certain pronouncements that were made, especially with taxation, probably is coming back to hand them so quickly.
The scrapping of the taxes.
Yes.
But they've committed to that. The finance minister.
That's what I'm saying.
Said it
so if you look at the medium-term strategy to move revenue, and in the continent, we are about the 38th or so.
With a very low tax to GDP.
Revenue to GDP. So this medium-term strategy to improve revenue to about 18 to 20%. That included some of these COVID tax, it included e-levy and all that. So now if you come up with pronouncements of abolishing certain taxes, then you will meet the reality earlier than you thought.
I think his point really was that not everybody pays tax, so his would be to expand the tax net and ensure compliance.
I get it, I get it, and I mean I agree. Let me. I agree with you that I mean in the informal sector, as we say, even the PAYE versus the informal sector, the ratio is 13-1 in terms of revenue. So we need to expand it. We need to be efficient with it. But what I'm saying is, if you look at the medium-term strategy to improve revenue, okay, I feel now the reality is dawning in. Taxes are, the things you don't just go in, and we seem to be sometimes playing, unfortunately, to a certain tune, okay? Because, see, before you make pronouncements on taxes during campaigns and all those, you must be really careful. You have to look at the forecast, you have to look at projections into the future about certain sectors, about the economy as a whole.
But they said they've done all of that.
I'm coming.
Yeah, but the MPP
I'm landing.
also promised
I'm landing. You have to look at certain sectors, the economy as a whole. Whether you're going to see growth in the sector, whether there's going to be whatever level of growth in the economy itself, because if you're going to meet this medium-term strategy, revenue strategy, as I'm talking about, and at the same time, I'm not saying make life in quote easy for, the populace, don't abolish certain taxes, but then if you have a strategy to follow to improve revenue, but at the same time you are abolishing, claiming to, indicating that you are going to abolish certain taxes, then you have to be careful. You find yourself in this tight corner that now that you are giving, increases that are really, really below where even inflation is. And the real increase is actually negative. The real increase is actually negative.
But as I said earlier, it's been so for a while. Yeah, it's been negative for a while.
But by what gap?
So if inflation was like 30 or even 50, and then you give an increment of 20.
Now I'm talking about, look at 2024, 2023. Look at the gap. So the real increase, the negative gap, now is so wide. It's so wide. That's what I'm talking about. So if you play to a certain tune and start making pronouncements about, tax cuts and so on and so forth, then you have to be careful, because projections and forecasts should be guiding you in terms of making these pronouncements.
Very well.
If a sector or the entire economy is not going to grow to a certain extent.
But Honorable, you see, we don't know that for now, because they are yet to deliver their first budget. So they may abolish those taxes and maybe introduce other things that will raking the revenue.
It's even looking at the whole thing one-sided.
Raking the revenue.
When you have
so
taxes,
maybe it's after the period, maybe after the year, or when how this works, that a lot of the things you're saying.
Actually, we have our own record. In 2017, the MPP abolished many more.
Yeah, they called it nuisance taxes at the time.
We are talking about it. And actually, revenue went up by more than 16%.
And because those taxes were abolished.
Where some of the rates were adjusted, and then they brought in some of the compliance measures and additional. So we ended up with tax to GDP ratio that went up slightly, and revenue itself, compared to 2016, actually went up.
I see.
And
I want to move to DDBEP. Just 3 minutes.
Why we came to where we were, where the indiscipline, fiscal indiscipline that the government exhibited. There's no point in raising taxes and wasting the taxes on nothing. That's the problem. So if you say you are reducing taxes,
but a lot of the money was used on some social things.
For the
free SHS.
We just use
all these programs,
look at how much has been spent on free
strongly
spent over 9 billion. You know,
on what they said was 5.7 million students. When the actual figure
is 10 billion, around 10 billion on 3.1 million or 3.17 million students.
And they gave us, to justify the 10 million,
they said 5.7 million. But that record
that is not a
that record.
And then look at the banking sector cleanup.
Yes.
Do you know that up to now we have 3 different figures being bundled around?
So we expect the finance minister to now put out the figure.
Yes.
So now let's look at DDEP. Let's do some 2 minutes on this. There has been some banter on this, and the sinking fund, the sinking fund, that the sinking fund is now working. The debt service reserve account, there's now money getting in there. That is what we're using to settle the DDEP and all of that. The MPP strongly came out to say no. It's because we left the buffers. NDC, through Felix Ofosukwuaddo, just no, there were no buffers. And he referenced the sinking fund that, you know, the last time there was some movement in it was around October, and it was just some $64,000 in there. And as of 31st January, 96 million had been transferred in there, clearly showing that, you know, the sinking fund has now been operationalized. And that is the reason why things are getting better. And he even says that some 96 million or some huge amount of money is 9 billion cedis has since been put in there for the next payment in July as a buffer. You know, the question is, what has the NDC done in the last few weeks to claim that all these monies that have been taken from other places into the sinking fund is as a result of your work? But nothing really has happened yet.
Oh, reordering business. Reordering business of government. Cutting out waste and wastage. Ensuring that what monies are for, what monies come into the kitty are properly prioritized.
That's what been done quickly then.
Yes, but what the government is about thinking out of the box.
Well done. Is it 6 weeks? How many weeks now?
It's less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months. But government is about thinking out of the box.
Well done.
Yes, government is about thinking out of the box.
Let me tell you, these within 6 weeks.
Yes.
No, we didn't create them. When the inflows are,
so the inflows are always coming.
The inflows are always coming. The taxes are always coming. Okay, but if you decide that you want to engage in wastage, profligacy, and then you don't service your loans, you have a problem. So we are saying, and then we knew, to be honest with you, probably you don't credit NDC with any intelligence, modicum of intelligence. I'm telling that we knew that upon assuming office, the first few months upon assuming office, we will have to service loans. And that we knew. And then, Setekwe, in the discussions I attended, always said that, look, the first thing NDC will have to do if you want to have the confidence of the international community is to deal with the debts. And that wherever we're going to get money, if it meant reordering our things, we had to do it. So we knew, we were not just,
is a different part of our economy not going to suffer because we've reordered business?
Oh, you are looking at impact effect. Impact effect. So to reorder business is to take where the impact will be lesser, channel it to solve a problem which impact will be greater and disastrous for the country. And that's what we have simply done. It's not that money doesn't come, no. Money came.
So you reordered business.
Look,
Wow.
the money came in.
If he's talking, we should listen to him.
Money came in.
Well done. For 6 weeks,
Yes. So
creating this magic.
yes. So okay, let me come to you first. So,
Okay.
so 6 weeks. I mean, they've reordered business, and things are happening.
And the results are showing.
Yes, and there's some buffer already, 9 billion already waiting
Yeah.
for. So that's recent. I mean, there's some 9 billion already waiting for July, August. That's quite impressive, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, you ask yourself, within this short window, really, what has been done differently to try to claim some glory for servicing debt that had been structured already, debt that was scheduled properly, and the NPP government had paid on 3 occasions. There hasn't been any default whatsoever. So the 4th one, funds had been earmarked for it to pay in the sinking fund. I mean,
but
now
the sinking fund,
I'm
the
coming.
record you have doesn't say so.
I mean, there's been, this information that there was a certain amount that was far below. Fine, even if the figure there was far below,
64,000.
whatever. I'm coming. Whatever it was. I mean, I don't have the figure now. Whatever it is, definitely it was due to sweeping of funds from other accounts with buffers to consolidate.
So that's
to
part
be
of the
able
reordering.
to be, I'm coming. Let me finish. Yes. To be able to service, even if they're claiming the sinking fund was not well funded. Okay, but those buffers in the other accounts, I mean, who left them there? Why, if the so-called economy being criminally managed or whatever, why were buffers left to be swept into this sinking fund or debt service account?
There were no buffers from. In the heart of Africa. There were no buffers. So money is constantly coming in, and so they just, like you said, just reordered the business. So let's say if you were spending maybe 10 cedis on maybe free SHS, this time around spend maybe 5 cedis, add that, bring that 5 cedis, take it here. You know, that kind of thing. You talk about impact effect.
That is interesting. We're talking about 6 billion cedis here. 6 billion. So the 6 billion within a window of 6 weeks. I mean, Ghanaians are watching and listening within 6 weeks. So you're telling me the tax revenue that came in. Look at the annual tax revenue and prorate it, and look at the period of 6 weeks. If you're going together, even if you gathered from other areas. So we need to be careful on certain pronouncements.
So it would have been better if they said that they added to efforts of the past regime to make this.
Of course, I mean, they're definitely sweeping from other accounts buffers there, and if they possibly did a bit from the securities market through auctions and whatever, they have to say it. But making it look so clean and actually, why should you take glory for a scheduled payment? Government is a continuum. So scheduled payment, 4th payment, it had been planned and prepared for.
Very well.
And first 3 had been paid. So
the last 2 minutes,
why should we take glory for paying something that was scheduled and prepared for?
Very well. Prof, who should be taking? Is there any glory at all to be taking?
Maybe Parliament should come out with a formula so they can use to share the glory. Yeah. So I want to lean on what he just said, that it's not like it just started. There's a memorandum of understanding, there's a payment schedule, and all of that. I think what is good for Ghana is the fact that the new government is respecting that schedule and has also indicated strongly. You know, if you look at our public finance space, there are certain ways that when you mention some names come to mind. Sinking fund, Okay, so with these guys in charge, I believe that the signal to the market is that there should be no perceived default, and that this arrangement. And I think it was also smart the government did so, because you need to consolidate the goodwill, the confidence. So if you check in the run-up to the 2024 election, government was struggling to even meet its auction target in the money market. We couldn't meet our treasury bill. November, we struggled. But you could see that right after the election, like some immediate confidence, like some kind of deposit of trust put in the government account. And it showed up in the treasury bill sometimes more than 40% oversubscribed.
The government are rejecting the bid.
But all of that is at the short end of the yield curve. What the government actually needs is to be able to operate in the medium to the long-term end of the yield curve. And I believe that this announcement of the sinking fund being operationalized and all of that will help us to reopen the bond markets. Before we can go to the international capital market, let's begin to trade in our own bond market. So I think I congratulate the government for keeping up to the arrangement. And of course, the previous government had also kept to that. So before you talk about fourth payment, fifth payment, there was first, there was second, there was third. Okay, so I think now
you displayed the glory. All right, thanks so much. So in the studio is the Honorable Yinsa Fuseni, former MP Tamale Central, the Honorable Chunibu Fokuo MP Maso Kwanta, Professor Godfred Alufa Bokwin, economist, University of Ghana. Thanks so much for coming, and we appreciate your expertise. Thanks so much for doing the listening and the viewing as well. My name is Akufo-Addo. Have a good afternoon.